Hey, how's it going? No, we don't.
All right. Hey. No, we don't have a 2319. We're just gonna be doing some fiberglass sanding. This is rebuilding Slanche. At the end of last episode, I talked about this piece. This is the insert that goes in between the two engine compartments that steps down into the actual cabin space, the Bertram. As you can see, there's a nice big hole here, and there's also this nice big crack. It looks like somebody dropped something on it and cracked it. I got a little excited because I bought a new toy from Harbor Freight, aka this fun die grinder. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna end up going through and chiseling out each one of these individual cracks because I need to repair this properly. And it looks like there may have been a void or something right here because this is right on the end. You can actually feel it down in here. You can feel where the coring ends right here, and this is right on the edge of the coring. So this was probably a void here and something hit it and it compressed it. So I'm just gonna grind this out, get this nice and smooth and level, and then I'll clamp something in place and I'll get this so we're back to a correct fit there. I'm also gonna sand all around this area here because we're gonna have to lay in glass on the underside and the top side, but we're gonna wanna do that and kind of build it up like this instead of just trying to go straight across. And we'll attack that as we go. First, I need to wipe this thing down. Just give me a second here. Alright, there we go. All clean. Okay, so I'm just gonna hit this with the old die grinder now, and we're gonna get this ready for some fresh glass. Oh, fiberglass. We love to work with you, but we hate that you make us itch. Oh well, all part of the game. Anyways, so this is what I ended up doing. So, to be able to layer this in, you can't just, done. You need to build up its strength. So on both sides here, on both the back side, because we're gonna layer in some fiberglass on this side, and we're also gonna do the same thing over here, it's tapered. So we can build that up, and now this is going to create a nice uniform structure of fiberglass, because if I just put in a piece of fiberglass on the bottom here, and then I just slapped in a big thing of polyester fairing compound and called it a day, this would immediately crack, and this would probably break again because the fairing compound has no structure to it. So what we're going to do is use some chop strand mat. And we're going to do the same thing here. I'm actually going to go through and grind this back a little bit. I hate to damage this non-skid, but I don't know, maybe we can find a way to make like a template from up here and be able to repeat it down here or something, or we just call it good enough. I don't know. We'll see what happens there, but yes, that's what we're going to have to do. And I'm using polyester resin for this. With some chop strand first to fill in some of this and to get an initial structure across. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to be gel coating all this. I'm going to be using epoxy. I use some epoxy on the swim platform. I'm going to use some epoxy in some other videos and some other repairs here. But for this, I'm going to use polyester. And the nice thing about polyester is it's a lot cheaper than epoxy. But for here, I'm doing it because I'm just rebuilding this structure. Because it's hollow right here, I might also core that with a piece of Coosa as well. in the future, just because this is a spot where people are stepping right down into the boat, and it's a high traffic area, so I might actually end up Cusaing this. We now have made this nice lovely clamp contraption. We've cleared away some nice clean material. So remember that time like 30 seconds ago when I said, hey, we're not just gonna go and call it a day? Well, it's gonna look like that's what I'm about to do, but we really just need to put a nice strong piece of fiberglass right here in order to build up our other fiberglass on the other side on top of it to fill this space in. So what we're gonna do is actually take a small piece of 1708 and we're gonna drape that across here and allow that to form in, and then a larger piece, and we'll tab that in, and that's gonna become our backbone because that's gonna be on the other underside. And then we'll also probably wrap a small piece here, and these pieces are, they're going to be structural but also semi sacrificial, because we're going to need to build up using chop strand mat to get this shape and to get this edge here and this contour, and then we'll be able to kind of fair all this in with our gel coat once we get that laid in. So I'm going to stir up a batch of resin here, and we will get this one laid up and go from there. I almost forgot about clamps. Oh man, clamps is gonna get me.
I ought to clamp you. You want to be clamped?
Anywho, the reason that this is clamped together is I'm using this junk board as a backbone again to make sure that these two pieces here are flush, because that crush line actually crushed this thing slightly out of whack. And so what I'm gonna do is fill this in, but ensure that we are getting a flush job here, as well as all of those fiberglass fibers are filling down in the space, because look at that, a nice big old void. And if you follow that void, it goes all the way through those two fiberglass cracks, which we've dug out. So we now need to fill this in, and then some of this out is going to ooze out the front, which is fine because this is all going to be sacrificial anyways, and we're going to fair all that in. The only problem with cooking with Polly? On a hot day? Woo, baby! I smell this thing baking off like grandma's pie. And epoxy will kick off when it's warm out, and it'll do it quicker. Polyester will just let it eat. So we kind of got to move a little fast here because it's warm, and I wasn't ready. And we're gonna brush that right on. Now remember, this is just your binder. Resins have no structural capability unless they have something added to them, like silica or some milled fibers or something, but this is just what gets that glass to stick together and to adhere. Now, I can already tell you this is not going to wet out easy because 1708 is thick. Yeah, that cup's getting hot. You really just want to get it's not about getting it to stick. Well, it is about getting it to stick, but it's also about getting this material to soak up that binder in that glass, to really soak up the resin so that it can adhere, because as you saw over in this section where that void was, looking at it, it just looks like the woven roving just didn't get resin. So it was just a dry spot that turned into an air bubble, and just was waiting for a nice heavy weight to fall on it, like what looked like happened there, and it cracked. And again, I'm not brushing, I'm dabbing, because if you brush, you're actually gonna pull apart that milling. You really just wanna dab it in, because you're just trying to push it in to absorb that resin here. And again, this is not gonna look very pretty, but this is just some of this is just to get the basic structure here to build us kind of our template for our next round, where we'll go in and we'll do that fine-tuned layup here. It's the next day. I got some tea. I ended up getting a little sidetracked yesterday while this stuff was curing, and I was just tired, man. And I decided I'm not gonna rush anything. I'm just gonna take a break and I'll get going to this. But anyways, so got some detox tea. It's like 5:30, almost 6 o'clock the next day. I had to do that work thing today, but now we're here and now we're gonna do some fiberglass. And so, hey, let's take a look at how this turned out. So I took the clamps off, and our guide piece, which was our faux mold, turned out pretty sweet. So that's exactly what we're looking for. That is that glass cured, and this is now all flush. And this is no more void. We filled that in. This is what that chop strand mat does. It just absorbs that resin and it becomes this creature. It's basically what it is. This is the thing of the fiberglass world, basically. And that just filled in all that shape, and that 1708 right here came right across and did what we needed it to do. So we've got a little cup right here, but that's okay. We're just gonna sand all this down and we will get ready to lay in our top pieces. But I think this is all right for now. I'm gonna cut this off, obviously, but eventually what I'm gonna do is, this is okay for now and enough for me to build up the glass where I need it to build up. For the next part of this, once I get my Coosa board, I do think I'm going to put in a full coring brace right here, just because this is a high step area and I want to make sure this is as strong as possible. So let me cut this bit off and we'll get this thing flipped, and we may have to do a little bit of sanding and grinding here, but let's lay in our chop strand into these spider cracks. Nice and sanded, much better. So you see this has a cup. This is due to some sag, obviously. I probably didn't really mean to have it sag, but this indent is actually what we're looking for, because when you're laying in fiberglass, you don't just, like I was talking about earlier, you don't just kind of good. Now we've got this base layer on the bottom, but what we actually need to do now is we're going to create there's going to be a small piece here, a secondary smaller piece. Well, it's going to get larger. Think of it like a Russian doll here. We're going to do smaller piece, bigger piece, even larger piece. And then in there as well, we're going to probably put in a little bit of this chop strand mat just to fill in some of these voids and gaps. Now, little trick here is, got my square. If I put this down, there's that nice gap, and that's exactly what we're looking for, because we actually want to build this up in a nice gradual build up instead of just trying to layer it all on. And some of this is going to be sacrificial, and I will probably, on this one, I am going to get this probably up until the last layer is ready. And we got that resin mixing up here. This stuff is unthickened. Just using a nice little piece of scrap wood here. So this is unthickened epoxy. The reason why I'm using unthickened here is I want this to wet out nicely. Get that fiberglass here to wet out nice and smooth with not a lot of air. Now you'll see I've got these little pieces of 1708 that I cut up. I'm going to layer it in here. And then on top of that, I'm going to be mixing in some of this chopped strand mat here. And on top of that, I'm going to be using some of this chopped strand mat as well to fill in. I've got a little spot over here. I'll flip the camera around so you can see it. And then we've got those spider cracks up here that we'll be working on. I taped everything off as well so that I am not going to sand or get any resin on this gel coat. Yeah, a little tip there. You can call this the Kenny Loggins because we're going in the danger zone! Get your chip brush, dip her in, wet it out, and you are fiberglassing. Take that little piece. And we don't have to worry about these fibers that are sticking off and everything. We're going to sand that off later. When I first started working with fiberglass, was on my 13-foot whaler. And I was so concerned about perfection and not having little fiberglass strands and trying to get it so that it was just a nice clean laminate. There was nothing sticking out on the first try. And then a wise man came over to me and he looked at it and said, it'll buff out. And I said, yeah. And he looked at me and he said, it's just fiberglass. And I think that's why I like working with fiberglass so much, is if you screw up, you can just sand it off and start over. And all you walk away with is time invested, probably a better product, and some knowledge. No, my cat did not just throw up a hairball. This is just what happens when that pot starts kicking. The polyester started getting hot, and I said, you know what, I'm going to leave this, and this is fine. I'll be able to come through here, and I'll be able to sand this off. That's why I put this tape here. Kenny Loggins effect in full effect, baby, let's go. And I'll be able to sand this off because fiberglass does not like to bend corners. So instead what I'll end up doing is I'll put a patch piece in here to fix that crack, and then I'll wrap that above, and then that'll be another sanding bit as well. Let's move on to these spider cracks. And for this section, this is all again just sacrificial. I'm going to need to come through here and I'm going to need to sand a lot of this down. This actually isn't working out the way I wanted it to fully, but that's okay. It's just fiberglass. You know when you ask your significant other if everything's fine and you know they're mad, but they just go, I'm fine. And you're like, that's BS. That's kind of how I feel about this entire layup here. I'm like, fine, but I'm not like super stoked with how it turned out because it's messy and I know I'm going to have to go through and sand it, but it's okay. So I got we'll call this one the bird's nest. Bird's nest is a go. Then we've got the two first spider cracks here. Whoa, trippy. Went a little wild, but I just wanted to make sure that I could get the glass jammed in that pocket. There's going to be a lot of sanding and a lot of cleanup, but it's going to turn out the way I wanted to, I think. I really wanted to get some of that glass down in those spider cracks. And then here, I ended up totally grinding out that pocket because making corners with fiberglass is actually really, really tough. You get a lot of air voids and stuff like that if you're not paying attention. And then I think that's just what happened here. Again, a little air pocket, gel coat over the top of it. Over time, will just break and crack. That's what happened here. So I just jammed a shit ton of glass down there. and I'll come through with the sander and I'll sand all that out. Things have happened. The repair turned out all right. We got it sanded down and it's nice and smooth and there's no more hole. Not bad. So now we take our straight edge and we come on in, and I don't know if you can see that, but you kind of can. Let me zoom in there for you so you can see. So there's a little gap, and that's exactly what we want, because we're gonna make some thickened gel coat and we're gonna fill all that in. All right, now we've got our forbidden cottage cheese. MEK. P. MECP. You know what's a beautiful thing about working with polyester products too is it's not like epoxy where you've got to get your ratios 100% correct. I grew up in a small town. I don't do math so good. I prefer my grandmother's measurements of, yeah, good enough, there. It's a family recipe. So now we just give that a stir. Get that MEK nice and blended. And now we have our gel coat putty. There's a lot here. And again, some of this is sacrificial because we're just trying to, again, smooth it out, fill in those voids. The structure is now there with the glass. All this gel coat's gonna do is make it look pretty, give us a waterproof surface, and that's about it. And now we wait. I decided to go ahead and just give it the full send and just like scrape it all out here. I'm gonna like feather it all in and give it a nice blend. I think that'll look nice, and it'll just like help show that there was a repair down there, but I think it'll help me feather that in and really make that look nice. Thank you guys so much for following along. I'm gonna let this gel coat cure. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you enjoyed my rambling, and I hope you are enjoying the channel so far, because it's pretty therapeutic for me and I'm enjoying it. I love working on boats and I just love using my hands. Please give us a like and subscribe. Please tell your friends. Please follow along and leave a comment every once in a while. I'm a social dude. I'm kind of a curmudgeon, but I'll comment back. Hey, cheers, guys. Thank you so much.